Well, this started life as a nice easy one, and as usual it's got more complicated. Atlas 404 mini digger. I've had it for about 10 years. It's a really good little digger, punches over its weight, but there's always been an awful lot of play in the king post. So I decided that it was time to replace the king post bushers. Easy job, apart from taking off a few pipes. And as I've got deeper into it, I've found more complications. One of the problems with these things, and lots of these things, is there are two bushers served by one grease point. And grease, like water, finds the easiest route. So the grease tends to go through the more worn bush, leaving the unworn one unlubricated, which then becomes the worn bush, which then gets lubricated at the expense of the other, and so on and so forth until the thing wears out. The other problem is that this pin is supposed to be held in place by that peg. There probably should have been a bush on it at some time, but there wasn't, which means that every time the king post moves, the pin moves, probably 10 or 15 degrees, which means that it's moving in the housing, which is unlubricated because of course it's not supposed to move, which means that it wears quite rapidly, which means that it's oversized. Both of them are oversized now, the boom fixings and the king post fixings. But I was still going to replace just the bushers and the pins. Expensive job, not in the whole scheme of things, but money saved is money earned. And I looked on the various digger parts sites on the internet, and was struggling to find 50mm outside diameter, 35 inside diameter and 40 long bushers. This bush has actually been turning in its housing because it's just you can just drop it in and out. It should be a press fit. So maybe the housing's worn as well, but a bit of Loctite might cure that. Anyway, on eBay I managed to find some 40 inside diameter, 50 outside diameter bushers, which also have their own grease point in the middle. So, bushers are okay. We can fit 2 new grease nipples, that's great. We'll leave the third grease nipple in and use that as well. More grease the better. The problem is I now have to bore out the housings to take the new 40mm pin. And the next problem is I have to find suitable length pins because of course they're not standard to this machine. So I'm looking forward to having a much more tactile digger when I've done. Well, now I've been having a rummage around for a bit of 40mm scrap, or scrap that can be made 40mm in the lathe, and I've come across this. And I'm a lucky lad because about 20 years ago I went to a scrapyard. I saw this stainless steel with bearings on it, and I gave the man £2 for it. And it just happens to be a 40mm diameter ground finish stainless steel bar. Fantastic. Stainless steel is as tough as old Nick and work hardens rapidly, so that should just make the pins for me. If I'd found it before, I could probably have made new bushers out of the inner races of those bearings. But it's too late now. So here we are. I've steam cleaned the thing, and now the problems begin. I need to line bore those out from 35mm to 40mm, and those two bosses. Now, when I was younger, I wouldn't have thought twice about setting about this with a round file and a couple of scrapers and a pot of Prussian blue, but I don't have enough life left anymore, so I'm going to try and set my lathe up as a horizontal borer. I think the most difficult thing will be clamping this in the lathe. So this is me using my lathe as a horizontal boring machine. Now I've set it up to do the other pair of bosses, and we should soon be complete. A couple of thou undersize. The bushes in the king post just fell out, but the ones in the boom are still their tight press fit, and they're having to be driven out. Fortunately, they're not too tight. We're not having to resort to hydraulics. Is the next problem. At some time or other, the kingpin has gone unlubricated and has seized up in the bushes. So the bushes, which should be a press fit, have been turning and have worn the housing away. The very best answer would be to make a new housing and cut the old one out and weld the new one in, but that is a huge amount of work. The bushes really are quite loose and there should be an interference fit. Now, we're not working in Mickey Mouse today, mainly because I can't put my hands on any metric mics. So, the vital statistics are 50mm is 1.968 inches. The new bushes are 3 thou oversize, and the old bushes, because they're worn, are 2 thou undersize. And the worn housing, which is actually worn oval, is from 1.991 to 1.996 thou, which is 23 to 30 thou oversize. So my plan is to get some shim steel. I've got some 9 thou shim steel. It's actually coffee jar, coffee tin steel, which is good quality steel. Anyway, we can wipe the paint off it with thinners and wipe the lacquer off the inside. So, if I wrap shim around the inside in that fashion, it will take out the oval. So this is what I've come up with. It's a piece of steel with a 5/8 hole down the middle. Now, it's slightly undersized on the 50mm because I want to wrap some plastic tape around it to create a barrier between it and the shim steel. So I put the shim steel with Loctite retainer inside the housing, then pop this thing inside, and then drive a 5/8 mandrel down the middle, which will open this thing out and keep the shim steel compressed against the housing until the Loctite retainer has set. And then hopefully everything should be just about the right size, and if it isn't, we can hone it out a little bit. Well, here goes. Got some Loctite retainer. The reason I'm using a shim as well as retainer is I think 30 thou is a really big ask for any of these chemical compounds. So plenty on. Old-fashioned joiners used to say it isn't the amount of glue you get in the joint, it's the amount of glue that you get out of the joint. meaning that you really do need to squeeze plenty of adhesive out of the joint to ensure that the joint is full of glue. So pop that in there, and I've been careful to orient it in such a fashion that if I do need to hone it out, the sharp edge won't spoil the job. And we pop a little expander in. I think it needs to go down a bit further yet. Get it underneath the ridge. Now the purpose of this tape is twofold. One, it holds the whole expander together while I put it in, and the other one, which is probably more important, is that it creates a barrier between the shim steel and the expanders so that they don't get accidentally glued in. There. Tomorrow we'll come and we'll pull that mandrel out or knock it out from underneath, and hopefully we should have a hole that is the right size. Well, since we last met, I've taken the things out of the top shims and put the bottom shims in. So there we are. And this is the new bearing, and it's feeling just about right. It turns out it's just a really good fit that I can knock in with a copper hammer. So, got new bushes in, new pin, everything's just about ready, but I've tried it for up and down movement. And as you can see on the DTI, there's just short of 50 thou of up and down movement. So I'm going to put a shim under the thrust bearing. I've found a piece of scrap that was 47 thou thick. So I've made the shim and I've left a little tag on it, so that I can weld it just with a little tack weld, so I can weld it to the body of the thing once it's all together to prevent it from turning, because we want the upper piece to be the bearing surface and the underside not to turn against the other piece of steel. I'm just putting the pinch bolt in, and this part of the job will be more or less complete. I've gone to some lengths to remove any unwanted or unnecessary movement, because movement equals wear. The reassembly of the dipper pivot, just a straightforward replace the bushes, stick the new pin in, but there's about 65 thou of play, so I've made a shim out of a piece of 16 gauge steel, just drilled it with 2 hole saws, and away we go. Now I have made these new pins myself, and I put a bit of effort into making the heads. These are the original ones, and the holes in them are huge. Now that's easy for the assembly of the machine, but it's no good at all because it means that the pin can waggle about in the housing. No lubrication, similar metals, and again, waggle equals wear. Well, I've been doing a little bit of digging today, and I can report that the digger is 100 times better.
a bit of precision to it now. It always was better than using a shovel, but now it's a different machine altogether. So that was a job well worth doing.